Welcome to the Runway, where we cover current events in crypto, Web3, and tech. It's Monday, February 26th. Let's take off. First up, crypto users could make a difference in a close election in the U.S., CoinFlip CEO. U.S. presidential candidates have won or lost key states by as little as 11,000 votes, giving crypto users the chance to move the needle 1 or 2 points, according to Ben Weiss. Speaking to Cointelegraph on February 23rd, Weiss said that this was the first time in a major U.S. election that digital assets could flip a race for candidates of either party. Major Republican Party candidates for president, including Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis, before they dropped out of the race, mentioned central bank digital currencies as a campaign issue, and frontrunner Donald Trump suggested in February he could live with Bitcoin, one way or the other. So my take on this, guys, is that this is absolutely true, and crypto is a sort of a one voter issue for many people, myself included. I'm a one issue voter right now. I want to see someone in office who's going to have a direct impact on this new emerging technology and industry. And I think a lot of people from both sides of the aisle might feel that way because it impacts our, everyday passion and our everyday life and interest, right? And really our passion and what we're focused on, right? You're kind of watching the evolution of someone like Trump, who, a couple years ago was maybe more antagonistic because of Steven Mnuchin when he was in office, and you sort of see the evolution of his thought process. While he's been out of office, he's been launching NFT collections. Melania, his wife, has launched some collections. He's now launched an ordinals collection on Bitcoin as well as on Ethereum. So he's sort of coming around. He's got Vivek in his ear, who's very pro crypto, who's kind of talking to him about jobs, talking to him about technology, about bringing this industry and the tax revenue and the business to the shores of America. And now he's kind of gone from this sort of more of an antagonistic role to sort of a, hey, if this is what people want to do, if people want to be involved in this, I can live with this. Which is the complete opposite of what we're seeing with the current antagonism and nastiness and sort of the behind the scenes kind of authoritarian abuses that we're seeing with the current administration. Next up, why Circle USDC is quitting Tron and what it means for TRX and GFox. It looks like this is just a coin journal shilling a random coin. But I did want to talk a little bit about USDC Circle sort of leaving Tron's blockchain because I think it is important. That being said, I don't think it's the end of the world here because Tether is still very active on Tron, and most people in third world countries who actually utilize the Tron blockchain, especially in Africa, use Tether as it is, right? So this is part of USDC's kind of push to become regulatory compliant and not have any, sort of surfaces for anybody in the government to sort of come after them. Which may be important for their mission, but I think that ultimately it's worse for society and it's worse for the world and it's worse for people to have less options, right? You're taking away optionality from people, which really sucks. So it's sad to see, but I think Tron will still survive and be okay. A startup sets out to fight misinfo with blockchain tech. A new startup wants to use blockchain technology to provide media organizations with a new tool to combat disinformation. This week, Now Media is launching Sovereignty, a technology platform to provide digital media organizations with verification tools that would help them authenticate their digital content with blockchain tech. In a conversation with Semaphore, founders Matt Medved and Alejandro Navia said Sovereignty will leverage Coinbase's Ethereum Layer 2 technology to authenticate content on the blockchain. They say this will allow users to see a clear and unalterable record of a piece of content's creation and any edits made to it. So Coinbase it's called Base. It's their Ethereum L2, and I think we might have talked about Sovereignty in the past, or another blockchain tool that was sort of used to allow media personnel to digitally sign something to verify its authenticity. And I think this will be very important, especially in the age of deepfakes and all of the sort of content that's being pushed out and the fake stories and fake things that didn't really come from certain sources, right? With sort of AI tools allowing that to proliferate, right? There's going to be good and bad that comes from these things. But in this day and age, it's important to verify with authenticity whether an article really came from somebody that is being claimed it came from, right? So those news organizations or those individual authors can now digitally sign using the verification and provenance of a blockchain to digitally sign and say, hey, I'm using my private keys to say I wrote this article or I edited this article, and you can sort of look at the blockchain itself to verify that it was indeed that individual or that entity who wrote and edited the article, which I think is going to be important as time goes on. Next up, inside the crypto industry's plan to vanquish the SEC at the Supreme Court, A coalition of crypto entrepreneurs filed a lawsuit in Texas this week that could force the Supreme Court to take up the all-important question of whether the Securities and Exchange Commission has the authority to regulate most digital assets. The outcome of the fight could determine the future for companies like crypto exchanges Coinbase Global, Binance, and Kraken, as well as a variety of up-and-coming crypto projects like Solana, Cardano, and Polygon, all of whom the SEC has accused of violating federal securities law by failing to register with the agency. The Crypto Freedom Alliance of Texas, a nonprofit trade group, and Legilex, said yet to be launched crypto exchange, filed a complaint in federal court Wednesday seeking a judicial declaration that sales of digital assets are not securities transactions, as the SEC has alleged in its lawsuits against Coinbase, Binance, and Kraken. We wish we were launching our business instead of filing a lawsuit, but here we are, said Mike Wazazak, co-founder of Legilex, in a statement. The SEC's rogue enforcement actions targeting our industry have paralyzed those of us who just want to build lawful businesses and technologies. The SEC declined to comment. I think this is really cool and really important, and proud of Mike, the co-founder of Legilex, and I'm proud of Legilex for doing this, right? This is what needs to happen. We need a check on the judicial branch needs to sort of check the power of the executive branch that is in some of these swamp agencies that are just overreaching and wasting taxpayer dollars and time. And it is very sad that we still don't have that clarity, and we have this antagonistic behavior coming from this administration and coming from the SEC. I'm not surprised to see this. I was surprised it hadn't happened sooner, right? So it's important that they are bringing this lawsuit in Texas in a sort of very friendly jurisdiction for the lawsuit, because they initiated the lawsuit. They can sort of choose the jurisdiction, right? So they chose Texas, and they chose this area because, this sort of area and this judge is sort of known for checking government power, which is nice to see. The SEC is doing the same thing, right? In the words of Kevin O'Leary, California and New York are loser states, and you can guess where the SEC has been bringing their lawsuits against Coinbase and companies like Kraken. They're bringing them to loser places like Washington, D.C., like New York City, and California, right? They're bringing them to sort of loser states where they have sort of big government bureaucracies, and the judges and sort of people that work there are much more likely to side with government abuses and government overreach. Even those judges have been upholding the law and been doing a pretty good job, because they have been pushing back against the SEC, which the SEC has historically had a really good track record of winning cases. Just over a year after it received the charter, the OCC issued a consent order against Anchorage in April 2022. The OCC said the startup failed to set up an adequate compliance program. Quinn told Business Insider that her departure was unrelated to Anchorage's regulatory status, and she felt comfortable leaving her post because of her team's work to strengthen its compliance program. Their chief legal officer is leaving, right? So she's maybe just taking a break here. She says, after 7 years in the crypto industry, the continued lack of regulatory clarity and multitude and scale of bad actors in the space have caused me to pause my professional dedication to the industry. Quinn said in a statement on Friday, if I had known that the 7 years after entering into the space, we still would not have regulatory classification of the asset class in the United States or knowable agency jurisdiction, I am not sure I would have entered to begin with. Crazy in America that we don't have an embrace of technology, an embrace of things, and, trying to attract talent. Instead, we're attacking, businesses. We're wasting taxpayer dollars on this nonsense. This is another example of a sort of a swamp agency kind of doing the little end around, the unconstitutional end around. And here it is, Choke Point 2.0 in action, the OCC, which they got the same clown from the Obama administration back in power doing this again, behind the scenes, going after companies. And it's bullshit. Let's talk a little bit about this lawsuit from the Texas Blockchain Council and Riot Platforms against the Department of Energy. I know we spoke a lot about this sort of unconstitutional information collection where they don't want to go through the normal procedures. They want to say this is an emergency because the price of Bitcoin went up, even though it hasn't been an emergency for the past, decade of mining that's been occurring all over the place. All of a sudden, it's an emergency just because they want to slam something through, and all the swamp agencies want to get their fingers in everything and sort of paint the picture. They want to slam some stuff through, right? So it's all of a sudden an emergency because the price of Bitcoin went up, which is what they put in their little thing, which is just utter bullshit. But it's nice to see the industry pushing back here. So we've got an actual complaint here. It says plaintiffs, Texas Blockchain Council and Riot Platforms Inc. bring their civil action for declaratory and injunctive relief to halt an unlawful so-called emergency collection. And I think so-called emergency is pretty much the the exact terminology here. The so-called emergency collection of information for many of TBC's members, including Riot, Defendant Department of Energy and Defendant Energy Information Administration proposed to perform the collection, which was unlawfully approved by Defendant Office of Management and Budget, OMB, in support. TBC and Riot allege as follows. This is a case about about sloppy government process, contrived and self-inflicted urgency, and invasive government data collection. I think they hit the nail on the head there. On January 24th, 2024, Defendant EIA requested emergency review and clearance from OMB of a planned collection of proprietary energy information from companies that are engaged in cryptocurrency mining. This request was based on Defendant DeCaralis's ostensible determination that if such a collection were not authorized and if the Paperwork Reduction Act's standard clearance process were followed, then it was reasonably likely that public harm would occur. I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. OMB approved the request 2 days after receiving it from EIA, but in doing so, both EIA and OMB violated the Paperwork Reduction Act and its implementing regulations. They also acted arbitrarily and capriciously in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. Despite these failures, EIA has moved forward with its information collection and is demanding, upon the explicit threat of criminal fines and civil penalties, that certain companies, including Riot and many other TBC members, reply to the survey no later than February 23, 2024. Absent this court's intervention, plaintiffs, TBC's members, and other mining companies who have received and are bound to complete the legally defective survey will be immediately and irreparably harmed by being forced to divulge confidential, sensitive, and proprietary information to EIA, which had no lawful authority to request or collect. So I think, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think that pretty much sort of outlines the crux of the whole thing here. And a lot of the information that they're requesting is like very proprietary. They want to know what machines you're operating. They want to know their hash rates. I mean, this is stuff that has nothing to do with the overall energy usage. It's a very strange kind of Orwellian overreach that's happening here. So to my knowledge, the judge actually granted the stay here. The judge went ahead and basically, let's see if I can find it here. A federal judge on Friday granted a crypto industry plaintiffs a temporary order blocking new energy department collection of the sector's power usage data. So while this case is pending, he went ahead and I think they granted the request to sort of block this from happening right away. So this is going to proceed. I believe it's going to go to court. There's going to be some hearings here, right? But this takes us to our next article. There's a power struggle brewing over crypto and AI. Two hot sectors are stoking concerns about how much power they consume. One new lawsuit and one new essay signal intensifying battles over energy demand for artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency mining. Why it matters: both technologies demand electricity-thirsty computing at a time when the world is already failing to steeply cut emissions. As we sort of scale into the sort of the Web3 revolution with AI and cryptocurrency and technology, the world is going to consume more and more power as different countries come online, whether it be more so, in India and rural areas of China and Vietnam and places all over the world, and especially Africa, as it continue to sort of develop and expand and grow and population grows. We are going to have new technology. We're going to have more energy usage, not less. New technologies are going to command more energy usage. It is important that this is clean energy. Bitcoin really promotes the usage of clean energy because it doesn't have marginal cost of transporting that energy after you set it up, right? So if you're going to use it 24/7 constantly, you're going to benefit from that increased efficiency and, lack of having to move and transport dirty coals and dirty, gas, right? So it is naturally going to be cheaper over the long haul, which is going to incentivize more green production and more green energy. Both of these industries are absolutely going to use a lot of power. The interesting thing about Bitcoin and mining per se is that it has crypto, as opposed to AI, has a much more interesting sort of ability to work and integrate into the grid to benefit all. Crypto mining is a type of energy usage that is very curtailable. If there's stress on the grid, if there's stress coming from, a storm or a blizzard, the grid can send a message to the crypto miners to curtail their usage, and we can press a button and shut off all of our usage, and all of that energy can be redirected to where it's really needed, right? So this is something that typical data centers can't provide. You can't just shut down, sort of AI training and models as easily as you can with cryptocurrency mining, right? There's a customers that are renting from the cloud data centers, right? They have agreements where they have a certain amount of uptime, or they maybe spent months training a model. You can't just shut that down, right? There's a lot of these data centers even have redundancies built in with, huge battery systems and, gas generators on site that are huge in case of the power goes out. So they're really not grid friendly in that sense that energy is really curtailable and controllable for them. All right, let's go to our next story. Microsoft strikes deal with Mistol and push beyond OpenAI. Tech giant unveils partnership with French AI startup as regulators probe $13 billion alliance with ChatGPT maker. Microsoft has struck a deal with the French artificial intelligence startup Mistol as it seeks to broaden its involvement in the fast-growing industry beyond OpenAI. Brad Smith, Microsoft's president, unveiled a multi-year partnership with Paris-based Mistol on Monday, providing the 10-month-old company with help in bringing its AI models to market. As part of the deal, Microsoft will take a minor stake in Mistol, although the financial details have not been disclosed. The partnership will include a research and development collaboration to build applications for governments across Europe and use these AI models to address public sector-specific needs, Mr. Smith told the Financial Times. So what we're seeing here is sort of this idea that it's just not going to be sort of a one model world where one model sort of takes all of the user base of humanity, all people using it. There's going to be tons of different models, and sort of Microsoft is playing the long game here. They are integrating with different providers, and they are looking at different teams who are making models who might be trained in different markets, right? So Mistol is based in the EU, and they might train their data maybe a little bit differently and offer a use case to comply with all of the EU sort of different regulations. So interesting to see, because they had really bet big on OpenAI and have deep partnership with them. As Nvidia hits $2 trillion, billionaire Mark Rowan's asset manager Apollo calls AI a bubble worse than even the dot-com era. Cathie Wood's ARK Invest appears to agree. She has been reducing her holdings in AI semiconductor stocks. So this is an interesting sort of take here, that this is a giant bubble that's already sort of formed here. I think that this is incorrect. I think that this is still we're very, very early in this. And I think we're sort of in the accelerated picks and shovels phase of, tons of different providers deploying the picks and shovels for this. But I think that Nvidia is going to go a lot higher. I think that, a lot of these technologies are sort of exponential in ways people can't really wrap their mind around. And I think that eventually there may be a bubble, right? But I don't quite think we're there yet. Let's move on. Google stock falls as Gemini chatbot generates criticism. Google stock fell below the key 50-day moving average on Monday as Google grapples with fallout from criticism of its Gemini AI. Google stock slipped 4.4 to close at 137. Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives in an email called the Google sell-off on Monday way overdone, as Google has a massive opportunity on AI with the street giving no credit. Gemini headwinds, but we believe Google is one of the core winners in AI revolution. I'm not so sure. Google aiming to relaunch Gemini AI image tool in a few weeks. Google plans to relaunch in the next few weeks its AI tool that creates images of people, which it paused last week after inaccuracies in some historical depictions, Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis said on Monday. Alphabet's Google began offering image generation through its Gemini AI models earlier this month. Some users, however, flagged on social media that it generated historical images which were sometimes inaccurate. We have taken the feature offline while we fix that. We are hoping to have that back online very shortly in the next couple of weeks, Hassabis said in a panel in the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The tool was not working the way we intended, he added. I disagree. I think the tool is working exactly the way they intended, right? This kind of woke sort of racism, communism sort of has infested Google for quite some time. And sadly, a lot of people don't realize the extent of it, right? You think this AI model that they haven't released, and how racist, and how it's just like not true. It's just it will just not say factual things if it doesn't sort of follow this brainwashed sort of woke virus that they have in their heads, right? With all of this sort of nonsense. And when people use, Google search, if you don't think that you're being sort of fed propaganda and you're being fed, whatever they want you to sort of see, and if you think the algorithm is unbiased, the algorithm they call it, just the algorithm, right? Well, they train the algorithm and they bake their woke ideals and their propaganda and their social engineering and all the bullshit into the algorithm itself. So now you realize just how biased your search results are. You're seeing, what's happening with the model. Let's move on to some Twitter takes. First up, you live in a clown world when a president introducing a bill to make currency counterfeiting a crime makes headlines. Javier Milei to introduce bill jailing anyone who orders the central banks to print money to cover deficits, right? So it really is a funny thing that, I think this Fiat Hawk says here, counterfeiting by nation states has been completely normalized, right? So people just don't think people don't even understand what's happening, right? This idea of counterfeiting, and all it is stealing wealth and purchasing power from the productive elements of society. So it's funny to see somebody pushing back against this. Elon Musk here has just bought a new PC laptop and it won't let me use it unless I create a Microsoft account, which also means giving their AI access to my computer. This is messed up. There used to be an option to skip signing into or creating a Microsoft account. Are you seeing this too? Interesting. But since they now require you to use their service just to use your computer, Microsoft can effectively shut off your computer. Here's a post from Paul Grewal, something like 2 hours before. Testimony before Congress should not mean an immediate suit at the whim of an unhappy agency, not in a nation of laws anyway. It's just ridiculous what the SEC and the government's doing. Yesterday, Kraken FX filed a motion to dismiss its SEC enforcement action. The brief is a great read, a strong argument for why the SEC is wrong on the law, as is the blog post, which basically accuses the SEC of retaliation over testimony in Congress. They just sort of lay it all out. Kraken was testifying somewhere, and then 2 hours later, or a day later, the SEC sort of comes after him. This is Jesse Powell, the CEO, or the former CEO. Not sure if he's still the CEO or not. He's a co-founder. Today, Kraken FX responds, the SEC threatened us with this lawsuit one day after M. Santori-esque's congressional testimony. Its purpose is simply retaliation, intimidation, and harassment. The SEC continues to delegitimize itself with every bad faith act. Definitely agree. Caitlin Long here. Here's Satoshi making a similar argument to that of Lynn Alden Contact about the cost of running a Bitcoin node declining as bandwidth, storage, and compute become more efficient. We knew Satoshi was prescient, but this batch of new Satoshi emails shows just how prescient. Incredible. So when Satoshi designed the system, he could have made blocks come quicker as opposed to every 10 minutes. He could have made the space in each block be larger. He wanted to make it so that anybody in the world could run a node no matter what. So if you make a bigger block and you make faster blocks, you have faster transaction throughput, but you also have less nodes because the cost of running a node becomes exponentially higher and higher as time goes on because you have to store so much more data. With Bitcoin, the block is very, very small and it only comes once every 10 minutes. If you have a block that's this big that comes every 2 seconds, I think something like Ethereum, right? You're going to have a higher computational cost to run a node of all the information on that blockchain. You can do more with the blockchain. You can put more transactions in. The fees will be lower, etc. But it's going to lower the decentralization of the blockchain because it makes it very computationally costly to run a node for yourself, right? Solana is a version of this, but even more extreme, right? They're putting huge blocks with so many transactions per second and so much throughput. Very few people in the world have the computing power and can afford to build a computer that can store that whole history of the node, right? Which is why when you see the network constantly going down or having these outages or problems, usually they can get 10 people in a chat that are all running, the only 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 people who are running the nodes, they can get them together to sort of fix the network, which also means the network is very centralized, right? So there's trade-offs that are made for these different things. Let's move along to Nick Carter's post here. He said, immensely satisfying to see petty Biden's petty tyrannies restrained by the courts. Couldn't agree more here. Plaintiffs also demonstrate, and I believe this is from the article that we read a few minutes ago, the court procedure, and this was the docket of that judge sort of providing an injunction of that sort of unconstitutional data collection from the EIA. Plaintiffs also demonstrate that they are likely to succeed on the merits. The survey was proposed and approved under an emergency provision of the PRA. That provision sensibly allows executive agencies in emergent situations where time is of the essence to bypass typical clearance procedures akin to notice and comment periods and instead request information from the public on a much faster timeline. The power to utilize that authority under these provisions is not unlimited. Such emergency requests are only appropriate upon an agency head's determination that public harm is reasonably likely to result if normal clearance procedures are followed. The court believes that plaintiffs are likely to succeed in showing that the facts alleged by defendants to support an emergency request fall far short of justifying such an action. As a result, the determination likely violates the APA as arbitrary, capricious, on abuse of discretion. This finding alone is sufficient to satisfy the elements of the TRO analysis. This is what I've been saying since day one, that, this emergency thing, this is just, sort of government overreach and government abuse. It's just plain as day to see. It's just total bullshit. Let's move along. Mark Andreessen. Big tech AI systems are not the way they are due to accidents, mistakes, surprises, or bad training data. They are the way they are because that is the clear, stated, and unambiguous intention of the people who are building them. They are working as designed. I think he hits the nail on the head here. And I think a lot of people don't realize just how biased and how much propaganda and how much social engineering is actually occurring here. And this has been going on for years. There are many different sort of concepts here that people should learn about. There's something called, search engine. There's something called, I think it's called SEER, and something called SEAM. And I think on this post, I'm going to tag Dr. Robert Epstein, who's done a great job. He sort of exposing and looking into all these things. Look into his work. I'm actually just going to pull that up after this too. So like, if you guys see these tags where it says @RunwayPod on different posts, that's because I'm notifying my team that, hey, this is a cool post I saw and I want to talk about it on sort of one of our next recordings. So it can sort of alert them to add it to my show notes. But Dr. Epstein here has done a phenomenal job looking into sort of the bias and the Google, especially the propaganda, the social engineering. And he's even found what they do is really so insidious. Some of the things they do are so insidious that there will be no record of them, right? So like say they want to sway an election and people are searching for, where's my nearest polling location? Depending on what side of they have all of your data from everything you've done. So they know what your political leaning is. They will use that data to show you or send you subtle reminders to go vote that day. If they have another user who would vote the other way, they will not show the correct results, or they will show something that's sort of, they will suppress certain posts. They won't remind you to go vote, little things like that. And these are called sort of ephemeral experiences, right? So I know that Dr. Robert Epstein has a team of people sort of looking into this and recording these ephemeral experiences when they pop up in the browser, but there's actually no record of them, right? So this is super in a way, it's like it is very evil. And Google says, we're not going to be evil or do no evil or whatever it may be, but it is very evil. It's literally the epitome of doing something that's kind of evil, right? It's dishonest. And we need to do this and sort of expose this. And I think with their new AI, with this new Gemini model, it's very hard to, for them to hide this bias and this propaganda, right? They haven't fine-tuned it out. They haven't sort of figured out how to sort of make it super subtle so people don't notice the way they have with their search results. And I think you're seeing that. People are seeing that in real time. So I highly suggest not to use Google search browser. And I don't use, Google search for really anything anymore. There's Brave Search, there's DuckDuckGo. There's a lot of better alternatives. And especially right now with this new tool called Perplexity that I've been showing you guys, right? That is a phenomenal tool. And it already works better than Google, in my opinion. I could spend hours going down this rabbit hole. This is quite a rabbit hole. So we'll go to Dr. Robert Epstein's website here. We'll look up even his Wikipedia page. They do have some of the stuff here where he kind of talks about different things, sort of emotional bonding. He has a lot of sort of behavioral science work that he's done, but this is really, in my opinion, some of his most important work, which is the contributions to internet studies, the search engine manipulation effect, called SEAM. In 2013, Epstein discovered a phenomenon he termed the search engine manipulation effect, an internet influence effect that could give a dominant search engine company the power to determine the outcome of close elections. He presented his theory in seminars at Stanford University, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and the International Convention of Psychological Sciences in Vienna. He published these findings in the peer-reviewed scientific journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Scientists and continues to research this phenomenon. His research led him to being invited to testify before the United States Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution hearing on Google and censorship in June 2019. He's also has SSE, the search suggestion effect. Epstein determined that search suggestions and the suppression of negative search suggestions can also be used to manipulate votes and opinions, a phenomenon he termed the search suggestion effect. He has expressed concern that this effect could be used by big tech companies to influence people's opinions with impunity. He described this theory in detail during a 2017 seminar at the Stanford School of Engineering. So he's talked a lot about sort of the unethical stuff that Google's doing. And I've seen it, right? If you use a different browser, Google will push all the propaganda sort of woke posts up to the top and really not show you or they'll suppress certain articles or certain things they don't want you to see. It's just very dishonest. And it's very insidious. Let's move along. Vivek Ramaswamy sort of dives into this. The globally embarrassing rollout of Google's LLM has proved that James Damore was 100% correct about Google's descent into an ideological echo chamber. Employees working on Gemini surely realized it was a mistake to make it so blatantly racist, but they likely kept their mouths shut because they didn't want to get fired like Damore. These companies program their employees with broken incentives, and those employees then program the AI with the same biases. I think he hits the nail on the head. Paul Grewal.eth. An investment of money in the output of a common enterprise is not an investment of money in the enterprise itself. That's not just the law of Congress and the interpretation of the Supreme Court. That's common sense. I think this is I thought this one was really interesting from the case. They're kind of talking about this whole idea of is a crypto asset that's trading in a secondary market, is that a security, right? And it's kind of ridiculous to say that's a security, right? Where it's like if you've got an orange grove, with the seminal law that they used for securities law was like, if you bought this land and you made this deal with this company to reap the rewards of the oranges on the grove, that in and of itself was a security. That contract was a security, right? But when those oranges leave and they're traded freely, the oranges are not securities, right? I mean, this is like the logic here, right? So the judge asked if secondary sale token holders can rescind their investment contract, and the SEC lawyer said no. That was the nail in the coffin for me. And finally, let's close out here with something that is happening, and we spoke about it last week. And this is from Brian Armstrong, interested in learning more about John E. Deaton as he is going up against Elizabeth Warren. There's been a huge groundswell of support for John Deaton to sort of take out Elizabeth Warren, and I think she should definitely be concerned because, in the words of Satoshi, you've hit the hornet's nest and the swarm is headed for you. Have a nice day, guys. Stay safe, stay blessed, never stop learning, and keep an open mind. Thanks for listening.